next up is electrolytes, which is going to be an interesting one because I see a lot of people using them, loads of different types, different times, etc., etc. So I've brought some down. I've got the liquid IV ones, and I've got the Science in Sport, and what's this other one? I've got the zero ones, which is a caffeine as well.
Okay. So I'll start with this one.
Okay.
Because this is the caffeine one.
Yeah.
So this is something that I normally see people use for hangovers more than anything else. I've never seen, like, it's not informed sport for starters. I've never seen any athlete use these in particular. Mm-hmm. A lot of athletes, if they're going to be using caffeine, will either use caffeine shots, or caffeine gums quite a lot of the time now. Caffeine gums, fast absorbing, gets absorbed within your mouth. You can normally take it around kind of half an hour before. Shots takes a little bit longer. You want to take it about 45 minutes before. But putting these two things together, electrolytes and caffeine, particularly if you struggle with GI issues, probably not the best thing. Because if you take a lot of electrolytes, it can sit quite heavy in your stomach. I don't know if you've experienced it before, but I have. Particularly in warm weather, you think, okay, I need to drink a lot of water and a lot of electrolytes to maintain that fluid balance because I'm going to be sweating more, which, yeah, anecdotally, it's true because you need to replace those electrolytes that have been lost through that sweat. But it's also being careful around how much you take because of how it can lead to that heavy feeling in your stomach, those GI issues, which can ultimately start to impact your performance. So taking those alongside caffeine can just open that door, unfortunately, to those kinds of effects. But the ones that I see athletes in particular use more regularly, SIS ones, Informed Sport, as you can see on the logo as well, or like say for example some of the clubs I work with, we use the soccer supplement ones, just through preference really, and I've used soccer supplement personally as well, so that's why we generally tend to use those ones. But yeah.
What about the liquid IV ones?
Liquid IV again, I've never seen an athlete use them. Again, I've seen more people use them as a hangover cure more than anything else. Again, mainly because they're not informed sport for one. But I think people are more readily aware of your brands like your SIS, your soccer supplements, so they're more inclined to actually use them. I've not come across much research around kind of using the liquid IV ones. It generally tends to be kind of your standard electrolyte tablets that most people use, or sometimes gels.
Okay, so what are electrolytes?
So your electrolytes are sodium, potassium, chloride, and magnesium. So effectively what they help to do is maintain fluid balance and fluid retention within the body. So say for example in kind of a worst case scenario, because believe it or not you can overhydrate yourself, so a state of hypernatremia. So that's where the concentration of those electrolytes within your fluids is much reduced. So effectively you've got too much water in comparison to those electrolytes, which makes it more difficult for then your body to maintain that fluid balance, and it obviously causes a diuretic effect as well if you're hydrating yourself that much, so you start to lose more water. And hypernatremia in extreme cases can cause fatality, so it's obviously being conscious and aware of that as well.
Why are they important, or where do they come in terms of performance?
I think again it's thinking about the scenario that you want to use them in and thinking about why you're using them. Like I know friends, I won't mention names guys, don't worry, but they will use like electrolytes even if it's not kind of particularly hot for like a 5 or 10k run for example, which realistically, if you're hydrated already beforehand, you shouldn't really need it. the reason that you want to use electrolytes is to get your electrolytes back in balance, because you're losing more of them through sweat. So primarily sodium. So a lot of people, like say for example elite athletes, what they'll do in terms of managing the hydration and making sure they're getting it right, they'll do sweat tests. So effectively working out how much salt they're sweating out through their sweat, which I don't know if you've done the test at all before. It's not particularly nice. You've got to wear like a sweatsuit. You've got patches on you, and you basically go round and round on a static bike for a set amount of time, and then the patches get taken off and tested to see how much sodium's in there effectively. And a lot of kind of elite upper end athletes, where they've not got to worry about budgets and things like that, will do those sorts of things, because it's those extra little percentages that can help them to be truly kind of elite and make sure that they're at the top of their sport. But general kind of day-to-day usage, I think I see them used a lot, and I promote some of my players to use it in terms of kind of a footballing context. Mainly really so that we're filling in all the gaps and making sure that they're hydrated optimally before that game. Usually we tend to get them to use, so say for example if the lads turn up on a match day, I'd usually get them to have an electrolyte, 500 mils of water with an electrolyte tablet in it when they arrive, so that when they come to start warming up and when they come to that game, they're already in that kind of optimally hydrated state. But if it was particularly hot, like say for example one of the clubs I work with, we went on a pre-season tour to Portugal in June, which, as you can imagine, June time in Portugal, very, very hot. So one of my biggest challenges there was making sure lads are keeping hydrated. So making sure that they are using electrolytes before that session and at the end of that session to make sure they're starting hydrated, but also they're getting rehydrating after that session as well, or after the game that we play.
So that's kind of in the context of athletes, specifically the footballers you work with. You said 5, 10k don't really need electrolyte after if you start hydrated. At what distance should we start considering, for recreational athletes or elite athletes, start considering electrolytes?
When you get into that distance, like say with half marathons, things like that, for me personally, that would be that kind of baseline that you would work off, because for those people that have done half marathons and marathons, it is very difficult, and you want to make sure that you're maintaining that hydration. You're not, if you're going to be running a half marathon, unfortunately, a lot of the time you're not running around with a bottle in your hand. There's hydration stations normally all the way around, but you're not carrying that around with you. A lot of the time you're not thinking about it really when you're running those kind of, like when I did my marathon a few years ago, I wasn't constantly thinking about, okay, my hydration. That's coming from a nutritionist. Yeah. Probably shouldn't be that way, by the way. But you're not really thinking about that in that moment. So with those kind of scenarios, particularly for those recreational individuals, for those kind of half marathons, using one before, so make sure that you're starting hydrated, but also afterwards as well, making sure that you're getting rehydrated and optimizing that recovery afterwards. There might be scope where you might use carbohydrate and electrolyte gel. So like generally, I know we'll come on to kind of gels and things, but generally kind of after that hour point, if you've been running for that hour, if you're going to use a gel, if you're using a gel, a carbohydrate gel with electrolytes in there, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone really. So you're replacing some of those electrolytes that you've lost, particularly if it's going to be hot, but you're also giving yourself additional fuel source.
So anything half marathon and longer, we should start considering electrolytes. What about, so I'll do a 5k most Saturdays, wake up, go and do it at 9:30. I'm probably not starting that optimally hydrated because of the overnight fast. What about then? Wait, if you got this far, you must be enjoying the conversation. Make sure to hit the like button and press subscribe to show your support. Back to the episode.
I think even in that scenario, because like say for example, if you were going to be doing a 5k or 10k for example, what we generally tend to work off is looking at around 5 to 7 milliliters per kilogram of body weight for making sure you hydrate beforehand, which for most people is around 350 to 500 mils. So generally it tends to be like a glass, like a standard half pint of water. So like in those kind of scenarios, I think you could use an electrolyte tablet, but again, thinking about why you're doing it. Do you really need that electrolyte tablet? Is it more of a psychosomatic thing where I feel like I'm more prepared, I'm ready for this 5k or 10k now? Because like from a scientific point of view, I don't think personally you would need that electrolyte, but again, everyone's kind of different in terms of that practical application, making sure they feel ready to do that event that they're doing or going for that run on that day.
What about the 12k a day in November?
12k a day, I probably would do, to be fair. Because, I mean, particularly in terms of the recovery aspect, making sure that you're optimally recovered, ready for that race the next day, and obviously maintaining your hydration throughout that day. Because that 12k, what kind of time are you aiming for, do you reckon, for 12k?
About an hour, just over an hour.
Yeah, so you've got that hour in the day where you're going to be thinking more about kind of that run, but throughout the rest of that day, you've got plenty of time to hydrate and rehydrate afterwards. But even still, like with those kind of scenarios, particularly as you start to get later into that month, it might be helpful to start using them kind of pre and post, just to make sure that you're optimally hydrated beforehand, and also making sure that you're recovering afterwards as well.
Okay, and we've talked about a couple of different forms of electrolytes: gels, tablets, sports drinks. You've got things like salt sticks and stuff like that. Which ones should we be taking, or which ones do you recommend?
I mean, personally, I've always gone for the electrolyte tablets. Like I said, there's lots of kind of different forms out there, and I don't know if anyone's tried have you tried the salt sticks at all before? There's different ones you can get out there, but they're not particularly pleasant. They're kind of named on the tin, really, salt stick, very salty. So it's not the most kind of flavoursome drink that you'll ever have, but it'll still have a positive benefit. I think it's just thinking about the scenario and thinking about the event that you're doing, or if you're going for a run. Have you got the facilities, or are you realistically going to be carrying around powdered forms, or are you able to carry around gels if you're doing a longer event, for example? Or is it more practical for me to just be able to go into my cupboard, pop one of those electrolyte tablets into my 500 mils of water in the morning, and reduce my wastage as well? Because if you're using one of those gels, it's a lot of wastage as well in terms of the packaging.
Yeah. Should we care about ratios of electrolyte content? Because I'm sure they're going to be different in each one.
They'll be different within products a lot of the time. The one sodium's king. Sodium is the one that you want to be replacing most, because you're going to be losing you're going to lose a lot of sodium through your sweat, particularly if you're a salty sweater. So making sure that it does have a good sodium ratio in there is really important, because generally that's going to be the one that you're going to lose the most of. But again, I don't think it's hugely important. Yes, you still need to make sure that it is still going to be giving you magnesium, chloride, potassium, but primarily the one that you want to focus on is that sodium content, hence the salt stick.
So obviously, I said meant to bring a sports drink, something like a Lucozade Sport, and something that's spoken about is the tonicity of these drinks, so hypotonic, hypertonic, and isotonic. Yeah. What is this jargon?
A lot of different tonics. So isotonic is your more kind of readily available kind of brands that you'll see out there. So like Lucozade, for example, Gatorades, Powerades, which provide fast-acting simple carbohydrate source. So it's good for kind of fueling after kind of 60 minutes. Like say, for example, if related to football or related to a long distance run, if you're running for longer than 60 minutes, a good source of carbohydrates, but also you'll be getting some electrolytes in there as well to maintain your fluid balance and keep yourself hydrated. Hypotonic is fast acting rehydration, so something that you can use particularly after an event to help you recover and replenish. Hypertonic again can be used for kind of during events, so something that's going to provide again fast acting carbohydrate source but a lower sodium content, so lower electrolyte content, so it will give you a fuel source but not necessarily provide the same benefits in terms of that electrolyte balance and maintaining that fluid balance.
Can I not just make my own electrolyte drink?
I mean, you could do, but what would you put in it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the difficulty.
Yeah.
And that's the difficulty in getting a ratio right and making sure that you've got the right balance of electrolytes, but also you've got the right balance of your carbohydrates. I remember what year would it have been in? I think it was my final year of my undergrad, or second or third year of my undergrad. We did a practical where you had to make your own, and first off, it didn't taste very nice, and it's getting the balance right between getting the carbohydrates. So it's think about, am I wanting an isotonic drink, hypertonic drink, or hypotonic drink? So you've got to think about, again, the kind of needs and the rationale for it.
It sounds like it's easier to buy one.
Yeah. Probably. It's easier. It is a lot easier to buy one.
And my last question was, how important is the electrolyte balance, and is it possible to overhydrate, which you've already spoke about, hyponatremia. How do we wrap this section up?
I think just by, again, like any supplement really, is thinking about, why am I using it? What benefit am I going to get from it? And is it necessary? Can I get that same effect and impact and benefit from a food first source, really? But when it comes to electrolytes, you could even use things like salty snacks. So, like, say for example, like post a long run, you might just prefer to have water and some salted pretzels or some salted nuts, for example, because you're still going to get that sodium and replenish that electrolyte balance. Again, it comes down to what you would prefer to use as an individual, and also what you can tolerate. Because like I said, I know a few people that can't really tolerate electrolyte tablets, so they generally tend to prefer to use, like I said, salted snacks and water afterwards, because it's just more palatable to them. And I think if you are going to be using electrolyte tablets or electrolytes in general, think about, are you going to be using them for that more kind of long distance event, that kind of half marathon that we were talking about? And just think about, finally, the conditions. If it is particularly hot, like I mentioned with the Portugal example, probably quite a good idea to use them for make sure you hydrate during, but also post as well, to help with that recovery.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, click here to get the full episode, and don't forget to subscribe.